time now for Coming In Hot with Brent Wallace and former Ottawa Senator Jason York.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. Brent Wallace alongside the older Jason York. Happy birthday yesterday.
Thank you. Yeah. A little swollen today. A little too much sugar last night. That's what happens when you get older. You get sugar makes you get swollen. Oh yeah. I'm a big key lime pie guy. So I had my my wonderful wife Laurel made me a nice key lime pie from scratch. Took that down. But then she also has to make a homemade Oreo cheesecake for everybody else. So I got to partake in that as well. So a little bit of wine to go with dinner. So no, it was a nice birthday, Wally. A little golf in the afternoon, some wine, some good food, and some family. So it was a great day.
I was going to go to your golf event, but I wasn't invited.
There's a pattern. Seems to be a pattern going on here, isn't there?
You just don't invite me anywhere. It's okay. I got it.
I think there needs to be some self-evaluation here of what's causing this. We've identified what's happening. Now we have to identify why this is happening.
That's on
maybe
you.
James Duthie will know. Maybe James Duthie will know the answer when he comes on.
By the way, James Duthie is joining us shortly. He did work late last night, so I told him he could he could move it to later, or he could join the show later. And he's like, no, I'll be on, I promise. So we're just giving him some time to wake up and do his morning stretch.
Yeah. What a guy. What a guy.
Yes, it's Hall of Fame week, by the way. The reason we're having him, and then on Thursday, Luke Richardson's going to join us, is they're both going into the Ottawa Sports Hall of Fame on Tuesday next week. They join the 1999 Ottawa 67s. Mike Bullard, former hockey player. Dr. Mark Aubry's going in as a builder. Lyndon Hooper, a soccer player, and the 1974 Ottawa Sooners, Yorkie.
What a great class. That's a lot of different people recognized. A lot of people I know in there, especially Dr. Mark Aubry. What a wonderful man. My family's known him forever. He was my doctor for a long time. Great guy. I'm happy to see Mark going in as well. He's just a wonderful guy.
He's in the double IHF Hall of Fame. That's how.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Hey, how about this? How about this little gift? Have you got one of these? The Yeti coffee cup. This is unbelievable. My daughter got, and my future son-in-law got me this yesterday. It's one of my favorite gifts. I love little things like this.
So can you not just use a regular coffee mug?
Okay, anybody, do you have a Yeti cup?
No. But I will, in my family, my wife and daughter have about 32.
Yeah. I'm new to Yeti life. They should be a sponsor, but I'm new to this. But your coffee, this will stay hot probably for 5 days. Not that you want to drink a 5 day. Not that you want to drink a 5-day old coffee.
Yeah,
but it is fantastic.
So I have a collection of Starbucks mugs from all over the world on trips that I've gone to. It ended up becoming some kind of a stupid little collection. Yeah. So like Hungary and Paris and Prague and Sweden and London.
I'll give you,
so I just rotate through those.
I'm surprised you're not a Yeti guy because you're kind of a grinder. So people, when you go on hockey trips or you go to a hotel and you got to go down to the pool and you're not allowed to bring your own beer, and places frown upon that. So you when you're up in your room, Wally, you'll like this little vacation tip. You take your Yeti, you fill it with your beer, you put the lid on. Make sure you get the big Yeti, and you can get a couple beers in there, so you don't have to buy your $20 beers from the hotel bar. That's Wally approved right there.
I don't like the big gulps. We're way off topic, but just so we're clear, I don't like the big gulps because you have to drink the beer so quick in order for it not to get warm. I don't have a Yeti cup. My hockey tournaments weren't involving Yetis. I know, but back in those days, Yorkie, just like yours with your kids, there weren't Yetis.
But now you're moving on to your golden years where you're going to be able to take some vacations Then you get
but
yourself a
now I
Yeti
don't
cup.
have to pay any attention to the kids.
I know
They're
you're
old enough; they
missing the
can just do
point.
what they want.
You're gonna save a little money when you go down to the pool with your Yeti cup, and you can put your cocktail of choice in there, and it'll
I'm
stay
not
cold
going
all
to the
day.
pool anymore. That's the point. They're not 6 by supervision.
No, when you go on a vacation with your wife, you will go down to the pool. Come on.
No, I'm not going to the
attention.
pool.
Oh my God! What else are you gonna do? Sit in your room?
Go to bed at 8. Can we just move on? James, if James is listening to the show, he will not join the show.
You are the man that fun forgot.
That's not true. That's not true.
All right.
I was at a birthday party last night, just so you know.
Did you sing happy birthday?
In 3 languages.
Did your lips move? Were you one of the people singing, or you just sit there stone-faced?
I always sing the English version. I sort of mumble the French version, and then I don't do the Polish version.
Are you serious? You guys do 3 languages?
Yeah, my father-in-law is Polish, and so there's always a Polish happy birthday.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, that's nice. Okay.
Yeah. So can we move on?
Yes.
Thank God. Brady Tkachuk's probably still scored about 7 goals in the time we've had this conversation. He's doing well at the World Championships, by the way, if you haven't noticed.
He is doing great.
Final day of round robin is today. Yeah, he's got 6 goals. They play Latvia today at 10, I think. Canada plays at 10 against the Czechs. Anyway, all right.
Pinto also playing well over there, I hear, Wally. Pinto also having a good
Jake
time.
Sanderson looks good. I will say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm not surprised.
And then we'll also get into the playoffs. I might do that with Mr. Duthie. If you have questions for him, throw them in the chat. I've already got one from Jake. We'll get that into. Let's take care of some business quickly before we get going here. This show is proudly presented, as always, by our good friends at Betway. Bet your way with Betway. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Betway, the official sports betting partner of the National Hockey League. We will get to our picks for the conference finals coming up later in the show. Also by BEI, Bonisher Excavating Inc. This is the time of year if you're trying to take care of your front and backyard, which I did. Over 6 yards of stuff has been delivered to my driveway this week. They can do it. Aggregate and topsoil sales, give them a call. Equipment rentals, if you need some help with that. Also hot mix paving. When you're planning your next project, consider BEI for your aggregate supply needs. 613-432-1120 or go to bonisherexcavating.com. BEI, helping to shape the Ottawa Valley. And by Wendy's. Frozen bucks are awesome when they're in the back of the other guy's net, but that doesn't mean you'd want to eat one. That's why Wendy's only uses fresh, never frozen Canadian beef that's never seen the inside of a freezer in all of their burgers. Whether you order a Baconator, Dave Singles, or a JBC, you'll only ever find real fresh beef that's real juicy and loaded with fresh toppings. So download the Wendy's app, check out the latest deals, and order a burger that's only job is simply being delicious. Wendy's. All right. So Yorkie, I was right and you were wrong about the Rangers advancing, but we both correctly picked the Edmonton Oilers to be in the Western Conference final.
That got dicey. Did you? I stayed up for all the Edmonton games. They almost pooped the bed on that one late.
What a series!
3-0. It was comfy, and then all of a sudden 3-2. Couple inches here and there. The V bounces. That thing's going overtime. But like I'll say this again, Leon Draisaitl is playoff. Leon is an absolute moose out there. I think if I had a vote right now, he'd be my Conn Smythe winner. Just he's been incredible in that series. They did a great job on McDavid, by the way. Vancouver, he didn't get a lot of great looks, even strength, and he actually looked fairly human in that series. So full marks to Vancouver. Wally, did you watch most of those games?
I watched parts of most of those games. Yeah, I watched parts of all the games.
So here's something everyone's talking about: Rick Tocchet, and Rick Tocchet deserves a lot of praise. I can't believe nobody's talking more about Adam Foote, the job he did with that defense core. He, along with Sergei Gonchar, each one of those defensemen, besides Quinn Hughes, they were taking on Adam Foote's personality. By meaning, go back to those series with Colorado and Detroit when Adam Foote was one of the most miserable defensemen to play against in the league. I thought I've never seen Zadorov play that well. I thought Susie was really good. Tyler Myers. Those big guys, they made it real tough on Edmonton. But no, great series. It'll be interesting to see with now Dallas being kind of rested, and Edmonton had to. It took them a lot, obviously 7 games to win that. But I was really impressed with Vancouver.
So how much, Yorkie, as a player, you're going into the ultimate 7th and deciding game, and then you're told your leading goal scorer is gone, dealing with a serious blood clot issue. Like, is that as Matt Duchene would say, is that a kick in the balls?
Yeah, that's a good kick to the nuts for sure. Especially the way Besser was playing. He was getting a lot of timely goals, and they missed him on the power play. He's a pure shooter. He can beat you clean if you give him time and space. So they absolutely missed him. Their power play was a mess. And I thought that kind of lost them the series, along with Edmonton doing a great job on the penalty kill. But for sure, you lose a guy like Besser, because they had a hard time creating offense. And it just seemed before, anytime they were getting a look and it was Besser, he was usually making good on it. So absolutely, it sucks if you're Vancouver. But at the end of the day, Edmonton was the better team in that series. If it wasn't for Sale-offs there, I think that thing's over in 5 or 6.
Vancouver just didn't seem to be able to generate as much. Just a quick note.
No.
Leon Draisaitl has third most points ever through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs since 2011. He has 24 points in these playoffs, which is 2 behind him in 2022 when he had 26 points, tied with Connor McDavid. He's just a different player. Anyway, we've talked about it before, but he's just a different player.
Well, I'll tell you the biggest difference between him and Connor McDavid, and why playoff Leon, in my opinion, is a little. Connor's still great, a little more effective. Leon has the ability, when he's standing still, to hold guys off. He's that strong where he can shield the puck, protect it, and create time and space. I find with McDavid, he's got to be moving all the time. And when he's moving, it's so hard to stop. But when you can get him to stop, because he's not as big, he's not as strong, you can then double team him. And that's, to me, that's the biggest difference when why playoff Leon is a little bit more effective. McDavid's still effective, but Leon's just stronger. He's stronger. And when he's stationary, he can still make plays. I love watching this guy play. He's such a moose.
Interesting. Evan Bouchard, for a couple of years, it seemed like he was always like, oh, is he ever going to pan out? Whatever. What are we doing with him?
Yeah.
He is the first defenseman in NHL history to record at least 20 points through the first 2 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's be fair. Sometimes, if your team sweeps, you're not playing a lot of hockey games, but he is the first NHL defenseman with 20 points through the first 2 rounds.
He's been great. And for what Adam Foote has done for Vancouver's defense, you're seeing the effect Paul Coffey, who I played with in Detroit, have on Evan Bouchard. Coff was one of the most confident, sure of himself guys that I had ever played with, for sure. Hall of Famer. Thanks for that one, Tips. I know the kind of stuff he'd be telling Bouchard. Don't be afraid to make plays. Don't be afraid to be the guy. You're confident. Just filling him with confidence, making him sure of himself. Because Bouchard does a lot. It's not just, here you go, pass the puck to Connor, pass it to Leon. He creates time and space for himself. He's not afraid to try a play on the blue line, a spin, a skate move. Don't forget, he screwed up pretty bad in, was it game 5 or game 6? He turned it over. They scored. I love how he bounced back from that. But his greatest asset, Wally, is getting pucks through from the point. I watched him when he played for the London Knights. He was the best in the OHL at doing that. Now he probably is the best defenseman at siphoning those little wristers through from the point. And they got some heat on them too. He doesn't miss the net either. Too many defensemen in today's game now, Wally, they miss the net or they can't get it through the lane because guys are blocking. Bouchard doesn't seem to have that issue. He can change it, snap it, get it through better than anybody.
All right. Speaking of Hall of Famers, let's get right to him. He's here standing by. He just put off doing his goat yoga so he could join the show. Hall of Famer, James Duthie. Welcome to the show.
Hall of Famer.
It's hot goat yoga.
Ah, my bad. It's
Yeah,
Himalayan, I think. Do you not import them?
Cheers.
I haven't done the yoga in years, which is a shame because my body is now completely immobile, basically. So, how's my mic sounding, by the way? I was worried about the techno this morning. Sound okay?
Oh, yeah.
It's coming through?
You clearly haven't watched Jason York try to navigate the tech world during a podcast, okay?
You sound
Speaking
good,
of
James.
Hall of Famers.
How you guys doing?
Boy.
Fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you had a late night, and it's a busy week coming up. So I do want to get to that, James. First, I want to go back. It's been a tough, obviously, last week for you guys, especially for you. I'd like to get your thoughts on working with Dutchy, who I did my very first show, by the way, at Sports Center with Darren.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So speaking of nerves, that was nerves, but he was fantastic. Like that. So, and you know this,
Look at that sharp combo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a better looking Sports Center combo in the history of the show?
Yes.
Well, Hedge and Dutch, you're right. And let's say like Kate and Natasha and Kara, Kate and Kara. Anyway,
Ryan Mudrick. Yeah, we could go on. He doesn't need a script to do a show, which fascinated me. Like he didn't even look at it. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like,
well, probably one of the best ad-libbers ever.
Yes.
It's funny. I was thinking last night, you know how you remember weird things in your life? I was still back in Ottawa at CJOH when, Yorkie was dominating the league with the Sens, the late 90s. And
yes.
I can remember Billy Patterson coming to me and saying, hey, look, TSN sent out a release. They have their new, Sports Center hosts, and it was Darren Dutchyshen and Mike Toth. And I think that she'd been there for a short time, but I didn't really remember it. And I didn't know what to make of him at first because, in Ottawa, I kind of learned under understated guys. Brian Smith, Billy Patterson, they were old school sportscasters, very understated. And that's kind of the way I was brought up. And then here comes this guy from Saskatchewan who's just bombastic and talks a little bit differently with this drawl. And I wasn't sure what to make of him. And I think of maybe it was a year later or 2 years later that I got hired. And I don't think I appreciated him till I got there and just started loving the guy. And you're so right. He could talk forever. We were joking the other night, Rod and Jen and I, that, when you do that Sports Center together and you only have, in the old days, they'd let you talk for a minute off the top of the show. I don't think they do that anymore. And maybe a minute in the middle and a minute at the end. And if you didn't talk first, you weren't getting a word edgewise because Dutchy, he could fill the whole thing. And you mentioned your first show. That's something because I'd done it for a little while. But I think when we became a tandem in around 2000, I was really nervous because he was such a massive personality and I didn't know if, my personality would fit in with his, but man, he was such a welcoming guy and he made me laugh. Man, the 2 years I spent with Dutch and the year and a half I spent with Rod are some of my favorite years at TSN because I just laughed and laughed and laughed. Yeah, he was just a hilarious dude.
Yeah. James, I was watching the other day, and you guys were just telling stories about Dutchy. Oh my God, with taking his pants off for a broadcast. Jen saying he skips leg day, and the same joke over and over again when he gets to the studio and tells everybody. Like, I didn't know Dutchy, but just the way you guys painted the picture of him just sounded like a tremendous fun guy to be around.
Oh, he was. I mean, one of the ones I've forgotten, but somebody brought it up on Twitter was one of his, Daniel Sedin had just had a baby and he goes, I don't want to start any rumors, but it looks a lot like Henrik. like that is Dutchy in a nutshell, right? Because it's extremely funny and creative as heck. I don't want to bore your listeners with a lot of the story and repeat a lot of the stories that I told the other day, but man, there's just a million of them. And he was on like all the time. There was no off switch. I live up in Aurora and I basically moved here because working with Dutchy told me how great it was. It's a little town, half an hour north of Toronto. And so we would golf together and I'd pick him up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as he walked in that car, it was like you were watching the 11 o'clock Sports Center. Like I'd be half asleep and he'd come in and go start talking about some game at full throttle. Right. It just was, he was one of a kind, and one of a kind is rare these days, I think, but he was truly one of a kind.
I had that conversation, I think, with Ian Mendes too. And he was just like, we may never see someone like that again, who's that type of personality. And by the way, like James and York, you guys know in our industry, it's hard to find people that don't have bad things to say about you or whatever. Like you didn't find anything about, you never heard a bad word about Darren Dutchyshen ever. No. He was just a super good human being.
Yeah, he was what he was.
Stories. Yeah. One of the because everybody said you could never tell half the stories or most of the stories.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I was going through our last text chain. The last text he sent me was just before he left for Europe. He was in the middle of a trip for Europe when things took a downturn and had to come back. And he was in Europe, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or something like that. But the text he sent me, I could never repeat to anyone because it's so bad. But he had a way of getting away with it. I was saying last week, I said, if you had a transcript of some of the things Dutchy said in the newsroom or even on the air, in today's day and age, people would go, he'd be canceled or whatever. But he said them in such a lovable way that he was always poking fun at himself, that he somehow managed to get away with it. And something else. I'm also really happy. One of the last, non-sports center events. I'm so glad I got to go to Qatar for the World Cup, and it was such a blessing, not just for me, but Dutchy got to host the Grey Cup, which is usually my duty because I was in Qatar, and that it was in Sasky. And they showed the clip the other day, and I welled up watching it because for him to be, on that stage in Sasky handing out the Grey Cup is just, to be one of the last big things he did in his career, I think was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, such a big CFL guy.
Oh, I loved it. Such a big every sport guy, though. That's the one thing. Like B-Wall, I try to limit. I'll be honest. Like I can't. If you had me on if you were doing a baseball pod, I couldn't do it. I used to love baseball, but I can't follow it enough because I have to focus on hockey, the sports I cover, hockey and football and golf and soccer. I can't. I don't have enough room in my brain or time to really know what's going on in all those other sports. And Dutchy could carry on a conversation on basically any sport: horse racing, tennis, golf, all the biggies. He was just like, he was an encyclopedia of sports knowledge, which I think kind of goes underrated because you see this big muscular Saskatchewan guy, but man, he was brilliant when it came to everything he knew about our world.
Absolutely. And so anyway, my condolences to you and the entire TSN family, because he was just a huge, huge impact in that show. So I just wanted to have a chat about him because of it. I think
thank you. I said this last week. It's therapeutic to actually talk about it, because if you're just sitting around your house, it's a weird job we have where you have to grieve publicly in a situation like that a little bit, where, in the normal time, I'd rather, lock myself in my house and, cry by myself. But it does. Last week when Yorkie was talking about In with Jen and Rod, we were all in kind of shock, but it was the best place to be, sitting in that studio, which Dutchy owned, every time he was in there, and just talking to those two and sharing stories and laughing was the best possible thing that could happen.
It was. Okay. So I want to move on because I don't have much time with you. You're going into the hall now. You're going into the Ottawa Sports Hall of Fame next Tuesday. A huge class. We already said it in the show. Do you really need another award?
No. And I'm certainly not worthy.
Someone else have one?
I try to bug my buddies that it's cumulative. It has nothing to do with the sportscasting. It's just my cumulative sports career. I led the Blackburn Stingers A&E plumbing team in scoring in I think 78. So I thank the Hall for recognizing that brilliant season. The Ottawa Olympian Touch Football League. I have a couple of trophies. I don't want to brag. A couple of trophies from there. Sportsmanlike player, something like that. Gloucester Hornets, we won some titles. So I think cumulative, in each individual sport, I might not have got in, but cumulatively.
So I got it. So there's a line in your Wikipedia page. I don't know if you've read this. Maybe you've written it.
I've definitely not written it. No.
James Duthie was a former touch football standout in the MTTFL.
Whoa.
Duthie's career was cut short due to a devastating downfield head-to-head collision.
Yeah, I'm guessing that was one of my touch football buddies, but that is a true fact. I did love touch football. That was my number one love. And shout out to the Ottawans being touch football league in the late Ed Laverty, because that was the greatest league in the country. But I was playing in Toronto well into my 40s, and I did get completely knocked out coming across the field. I ran into some former CIS linebacker going up for a ball, and we went literally head to head. And I woke up on the sidelines, and I'd had concussions before, but not like that. Like, apparently I was walking around on all fours gurgling, which I should not make light of. But strangely enough, an hour later, Gord Miller called me and said, "Did you get knocked out today?" I'm like, "Wow, man, you do have sources," because I was playing a beer league game on a field somewhere, but I guess he knew somebody that was playing in the game. So I don't know who put that in there, but there is truth to it.
Okay.
James, I got sources too, because I heard last time when you were given the key to the city, you had a lot of people come, and everybody likes you. You had people there. I heard Wally was there too, and I heard Rod Smith. Everybody was getting thanked, your speeches, and then Wally was sitting there waiting, and then crickets.
There's two people.
There seems to be a trend with this guy. Like, he's always the guy left out. He's always not happy.
Okay, I made a big. You guys are laughing about this, but I actually lost sleep over this because I made a mistake. I didn't really prepare a speech. And then, you can kind of see the crowd out there, and I don't really have that many friends. So there was, maybe 100 people there, something, or 50 people. I don't know. But I decided to just basically thank them all. That was my speech. I was going through life saying, here's my childhood friends, and here's my family, and here's some people from CJOH, and B-Wall and a buddy of mine named Dave Shaw were the two people I completely just forgot, because I literally thanked 100 people. It was the stupidest speech ever. And
the janitor walked by. It's like, oh, I'd like to thank the janitor.
And my wife gave me such a hard time, because she goes, why did you start trying to thank everyone? And I'm like, I don't know. I started to thank people, and then I'm like, well, if I leave anybody out. So I was kind of looking through the crowd, and it was kind of dark back there. I was trying to recognize people and just throwing random names out. And then I started to panic. So B-Wall, I want, on this public stage, I want to thank you for being a good friend all these years.
There, you feel better now? You feel better? While your feelings were all hurt.
I'll lead off my the Ottawa Sports Hall of Fame speech with a tribute to B-Wall.
Perfect. Thank
you. And Yorkie, thank you too, because I don't want to have left you out now too.
No, thank you.
Luke Richardson said he's going to do it anyway, so he didn't have to be prompted.
Yeah.
Okay, so going into the Hall of Fame, I'm just curious. Do you write a speech for this, since you've done so many things off the cuff? And I'll bet the reason I say that is before we do a live hit, you'd be like, okay, well, what do you want me to say to you, or how do you come? I'm like, I don't know, just say something. And then of course you would just nail some genius comment. So you're not really a prepared guy. You are, but you're not. You're very good at ad-libbing. So I'm just curious if you have a speech ready.
I will think about something to say. I won't have a speech per se. It's kind of like the way I do TV. You're right, B-Wall. I like to prepare. Like, when we're doing a show, I'll write down like point form notes on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Because we don't use a script or a teleprompter or anything like that. But I hopefully it comes out somewhat naturally, and I'll go off on tangents. But I literally did not prepare anything for that key to the city, and I butchered it horribly. So I will at least try to think of things I'll say. One thing I'll tell you, I will say, is it's such a cool class to go in with, because I have sort of little connections with all of them. But Lyndon Hooper, who is the soccer player going in, he deserves more credit for my career than he will ever know until that night. Because soccer was kind of my first thing. I grew up in BC. We didn't play hockey. The soccer season went from from October to April. We played all winter. And so I moved to Ottawa when I was 8 years old, and I didn't know how to skate. So soccer was my thing. I played for the Gloucester Hornets. My dad was a high-ranking coach there, and we had a really good team. And our arch rivals were the Nepean Hotspurs. So I can't remember what age that Lyndon and I first met on the field, but we were the same age. So maybe 11, 12 years old. And I thought I was really good. Like I thought I could play like provincial team or, maybe have a chance at a scholarship. And the first game I played against Lyndon Hooper shattered all of my dreams because he was so much better than me or anybody else on our team. And I had to mark him, like guard him, whatever. And I was so exhausted after 10 minutes, I was almost puking and like begged the coach to come off because he just never stopped running. And my little 12-year-old self, I can still remember sitting on that sidelines going, I have no chance to go anywhere in soccer because this freaking guy is unbelievable. And that would have been my first like adolescent realization that I wasn't going to be an athlete and I better think of something else to do.
Life comes at you quick.
Career path change at that moment.
Yeah, Lyndon Hooper is the reason I got into sportscasting, essentially.
That's cool. By the way, Big B in our chat just says, proud Stinger alum here. Dad, original 1969 owners, still lives there in Blackburn. James' mom was my teacher. Dad worked with Jim York. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I was, I'll cop here that I was a horrible hockey player. And I purposely avoid, celebrity games and such because I feel embarrassed as a hockey host that I wasn't very good just because, like I said, I learned at 8. I got decent by the time I was like 13. So it took me about 5 years to catch up and had that MVP season with the B&B Plumbing Enterprises. And then I got into girls and quit. So yeah, it's kind of a shame. It's proof that you don't have to be a ace hockey player to be a hockey host.
Very true. I was goalie of the week twice at the UNB summer hockey camp. So I know how you feel. All right. Quick question. If you could cover one sport that's not hockey, that's different from anything you've done, is there anything that you would like to do?
Ooh, I should have an answer for this question, but I would have said the World Cup, but then I was lucky enough to go to that in Qatar and do it. And, because I love soccer so much, especially growing up, that felt like a, full circle of life, Hakuna Matata kind of thing. I would say, I don't actually think now, Wally, about the covering. I actually think about, I kind of dream about attending them as a fan, because the one thing about, we're so lucky to get to cover all the things that we've covered. And so I kind of, every time I go to an event now, I say, man, I would love to go to this as a fan. I want to keep working, don't get me wrong, but I'd love to go to the World Juniors in Europe as a fan someday. Yes. Right. And just be one of those guys, you have to be so professional. And I would love to paint my face red and white and go nuts and have about 19 beers before a game like everybody else. I'd like to go to a US Open tennis tournament. I'm not the biggest tennis fan, but it's such an event and everybody who goes to it tells me how amazing it is. So there's things like that, but mostly I fantasize about someday when they inevitably kick me off TSN, that I would like to go to a few events and just enjoy them as a fan. I always talk about 2010 and the gold medal game. When Crosby scored the goal, we were only maybe 40 feet away from the net. And we were actually sitting in the stands because we had this really cool studio that was retractable. So it went out over the Zamboni entrance behind where Ryan Miller was in goal. And then when the period said, it would come back and we would actually sit in the seats with the fans, which was hilarious, by the way, with Bob McKenzie, who's not he doesn't love interaction with passionate fans that much. Greatest guy in the world, Bob. You know what I mean? But when he's working, he's focused. And so that was there was some interesting moments there. But but when the goal was scored, the entire building and the entire country's going nuts and jumping all over each other. And I can't do that, right? Because the journalism and Carlton in me is so entrenched that I got to just stand there stoic like a statue. I probably did yell out of a little bit of a primal scream for a second, but then try to recompose myself. So I would like to go to a couple events and be a fan at some point.
Jimmy, just so you know, so I started in 98, just like you did at TSN. In 99, they're like, you're going to cover Women's World Cup soccer today. I was in New York for the NBA Finals. And they're like, well, today you're going to cover Women's World Cup soccer at Giant Stadium. I'm like, what? Canada versus Russia. Mm-hmm. In walk the Russians media guys all together, their briefcases. They pop open the briefcase and pop out flags right in the press box, Russian flags. And I'm like, I didn't think you're supposed to cheer in the press box. And that's the day I learned you can cheer in the press box as long as you're at an international event.
Oh, the World Cup in Qatar, they have, match day minus 24 hours. All the coaches have news conferences, as you know, and that it was hilarious. Canada was playing. Who were they playing? Didn't so much happen for Belgium. I think Morocco. And it was exactly the same thing. And the questions were like, Coach, you are amazing. You are best coach I've ever seen. Could you sign my flag after the news conference? Thank you. Those were the questions they were being asked. So
that's wild.
Yeah.
Anyway, so is that the highlight? Is that goal? Probably.
I'm sitting down to write another book. I don't know why, because books are a pain in the butt. But I'm trying to write a book about different moments I've witnessed, and I've been lucky to be at some really cool ones. So that's probably top of the list. But Tiger winning that Masters in 2019, the Raptors winning the championship, and I was sitting next to Chris Bosh 10 rows back, and that was really cool. And honestly, one of the ones that is the Red Blacks winning the Grey Cup, just because that was such a big part of my youth, sitting in the stands since I was 8 years old, my dad and my mom. And my dad was dying back then and wasn't at the game, but for them to win in that fashion, when it was a shocker, I don't know, like 13-point underdogs to Bo Levi and the Stamps, and Henry's knee gets locked up and doesn't look like he's going to play. And then for them to win in overtime. And then for me I think that was, one of the first years that I was hosting Grey Cup, to be on that stage presenting the Grey Cup, and then called my dad right after. That was one of the coolest moments of my life.
That's pretty neat. Okay, how do you fix the sense? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I just coolest moments, James. I'm trying to remember. Did you win? Because you've covered the Masters for a long time. Did you win the media draw one year to play against? I forgot. That's right. So you played it once, or how many times?
Just once. I mean, I hope to be back a few more years and get another chance. So when you win, there's a 7-year waiting period before you can win again. The odds are better than you'd think, because there's essentially the same people cover the Masters every year. Obviously some new people, but for the most part it's the same people. There's a lot of people who don't play golf, who aren't interested in it, and so then I think the odds are kind of, let's say 20% once you're in the. It's not like astronomical. I mean, it took Bobby Weeks, I think, 22 years to win. I won in my third or my fourth. So I won the year that Spieth put 2 in the water and Danny Willett won. Yeah. And it was incredible. I'll tell a quick story I always tell. So we have a rental house, and so everybody's leaving early on Monday morning to fly home. And so I'm alone in my house, and I call a taxi. They give you this, this beautiful invite that says show up at Magnolia Lane at 8:45 or whatever. And I had just, back then, I'm a little crazy about golf now, and I'll try to play in the winter on the simulators. But back then I wasn't as crazy a player. So I put my clubs away in October and just pulled them off the shelf and brought them down just in case I'd won. So I hadn't checked anything. So I'm waiting for the cab to come, and I open my bag, and there's only one golf ball in my bag. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm going to Augusta National. So I get in the cab, and I said, is there any place open? It was Monday morning at 8 a.m. And she says, the only place open is a Walmart, sir. So she takes me to Walmart, and all they had at Walmart was Top Flight Hot XLs. So for the non-golf fans, no offense, Top Flight, not exactly your high-end golf ball. So I showed up at Augusta National with a dozen Top Flight Hot XLs.
Ready to go.
And then you go to the range, of course, and they're, beautiful Pro Vs with the Augusta logo on them. And you show up and you grab your spot on the range, and the caddies are all sort of lined up because you get a caddy. And I kind of without saying much, I showed my caddy the Top Flight Hot XLs, and he kind of rolled his eyes. And then I kind of pointed at the range balls, and he rolled his eyes again and knew exactly what I was doing. And he just turned around to not face me. And I just piled these range balls into my bag like the biggest loser ever. And that's what I played my round in, is an Augusta range ball.
And so, what did you shoot?
Yeah, what did you shoot? Yeah,
I shot 92, wow. Which is not I actually hit the ball great. And the one thing I always tell people, it's extremely playable. You play off the members' tees, which, back in 97 when Tiger first won, probably fairly close to that. But with technology, some of the holes are still close. Some of them are, I think 11s. It's got to be 150 yards back now.
Yeah.
So it's very, very playable, Yorkie. And I three putted a lot, not because the greens were crazy impossible. They were like ridiculously fast, but you had a caddy to help you read. I just kept putting it like 8 feet by and missing the comebacker. And I also made a 10 on 10. I hit it in a bush that you never see on TV, right of the green, like so bad. And anyway, took a 10. And I always try to describe to people, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then Rory hit it in that bush like 3 years ago, and I was back in the media room watching. I'm like, hey, that's my bush. That's my bush. Rory hit it in my bush. So I'm really hoping I get another shot because I feel like I'm a better golfer these days. And but it does get in your head a little bit too. I don't know if I've ever been more nervous than on that first tee.
Okay, is the 92 with the 10 carded, or did you take?
That's a 92 with the 10. So I actually played. I got like 8 pars or something like that. But a 10 and a bunch of 3 putts really hurt me. So I would have been like an 85 or something like that, or an 80.
Yeah. So when you're putting in your score at Augusta,
Golf Canada,
Golf Canada,
right. It knocks me down to like an 84 or something.
That's right.
No, I think I was about a 16 handicap, so it probably didn't knock me down too much.
Oh God, that's great.
I don't know if you can do this quickly or not because I'm way past your time as usual. If you know the show,
no, I'm okay.
Over.
I'm okay, bud.
It's how do you fix the sense?
Oh, good geez. I don't have a lot of time left.
Okay, well, like I don't pretend to have any. You guys probably discuss this endlessly here. I don't pretend to have any answers, and I don't think I'll say anything original that either any of you or some of your other guests have said. I think that you have to change 1 or 2 players from the core. It's almost like the Toronto thing where they say, oh, they're good players, but they don't work together. And I think it's the same thing in Ottawa, where you can say, yeah, they're still really young and such. But I think there's a point where you go, we have too much of the same player, and you have to, for the sake of change 1 or 2 players from that core. Obviously, if they could get Ullmark or a guy who can make saves would make a huge difference, and maybe we wouldn't have all these conversations about everything else. But I just think collectively, team defense, they're one of the worst teams in the league. And you've brought different coaches in there, and Jock made some strides here and there this year, but when you've had like 3 or 4 different voices and it's kind of the same thing, then this is like Captain Obvious 101, but you need a guy who's going to make saves, and you need a team that just plays better team defense. And like I said, I'm sorry I don't have anything more original to say, but I think it's pretty obvious.
Nope. There you have it. James hates the Sens.
Hey, I still get accused of being a Sens lover everywhere I go. Living in Toronto, it's like, Duthie is Sens guy. Yeah. I'm like, I don't care. I'm an Ottawa guy. I don't cheer for anybody, but my mom cheers hard for the Sens, so I would always like them to win for her.
People don't understand that. You can cheer for people and not have to cheer for hockey teams.
100%. 100%.
There was guys on the Leafs I used to cheer for all the.
And now I really vested because I want Pooley to win, because he's one of the finest men that I've been around in my career. So I want them to win, essentially for him as much as anybody else.
Absolutely. James, as always, it's good to see you. I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining our little.
Thanks,
show.
Boys. Sorry for the massive bags under my eyes. It was these post games we do on the late night hockey. I don't cheer. By the way, I don't cheer against the Canucks, but I do generally cheer against like 10 o'clock games. Last night wasn't bad, 9:30. So it's not like I want like the furthest West Coast teams to be eliminated, but it does help with my sleep.
Yeah,
James,
very East Coast bias. Sorry, Vancouver.
Every time I see Top Flight XLs, now I'm going to think of you.
That's right. Hot XL, buddy. The Top Flight Hot XL was a cut above the Top Flight XL. All right.
That's great.
All right. Take care, James. See you later.
Thanks, James.
Good luck on Tuesday, by the way.
Oh, boy. That's funny. Do you know
Hall of Famer.
I love James. He's just he's so organic. Like when he speaks, like you can tell when he doesn't prepare stuff. And you've worked in the studio. I've worked in the studio. When you have a host like that he just makes everybody else look so good. It truly is. It's a tremendous talent.
And that's like, I've done the same thing. I've hosted the NHL panel before a couple of times.
Yeah.
Like, so I can appreciate, and yet at the same time, I despise him for how easy it is.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's effortless for this. And I'm like, God, I'm just trying to put a sentence together over here.
When you hosted a panel, was it like a crusty panel? Would you take on like a little bit of
one of my favorites was Jeff
Was
O'Neill.
it a salty? O-Dog can get salty. He'd be good on your panel.
He can.
I like that. If we were to do an all salty panel, you would host. We'd get O-Dog on there. You'd have to get Torts on. For your for your coach insider.
Yeah.
You get Torts, O-Dog, and then we need somebody else salty on there. Just it's not afraid. I'll have to think about this one. Maybe anybody that's watching or on the chat might have some recommendations for the all salty panel.
It would have to be an old coach, but let me give that some thought.
Get a guy that's coached the Leafs for a long time. As soon as he's done, bring him on the salty panel.
Oh, Brian Burke.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
There you go.
I like how you shame James. Now you're going to go to the Sports Hall of Fame induction, and he's going to say something, and you're going to get embarrassed now. Because he's going to single you out. Because
I didn't even bring it up.
I know I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to switch that, we got a few minutes here. What time is it?
Yep.
We can get into this over the next little while, but I've been doing some perusing around the free agent lists in the NHL. There's some good options. There's some very good options for the Ottawa Senators this summer. For sure, you got to convince, you got to pay, but this is a year where you can actually sign a few guys if you can make it work that could help the Ottawa Senators. I've compiled
Monday
a list.
Show.
Yes.
Because Thursday, as Hall of Fame week continues, we will have Luke Richardson, by the way.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to throw a teaser out there, though. I'm going to throw a teaser out there. A guy that would look really good. A couple guys that play on Carolina. Perfect. You imagine Brett Pesce in an Ottawa Senators uniform. 29-year-old right shot defenseman that's 6'3", defends, plays the right way. Like you put him on your right side. And then you grab a quality NHL room guy, good NHLer like a Jordan Martinook. Oh, another free agent. There's a lot. There's more people than out there. There's more players than people think that are available UFAs this summer that I find very intriguing. But we can talk about this more next week.
Okay. So before we go, it's time to now delve into the lock of the day, brought to you by Betway. Please play responsibly. Must be 18 plus. So tonight is Florida and the Rangers. The odds makers have them dead even. And then Thursday's game one at Edmonton, Dallas. So Florida and the Rangers, Yorkie. Now, I need you to tell me tonight's winner, and I need you to tell me series winner.
Florida is a wagon right now. I'm gonna take Florida for the series winner. And I'm going to take Florida to win on the road in game one. I think it's going to go long though, 6 or 7. And that's a pick 'em for me. New York's, they're a very good team, but Florida to me doesn't appear to have any weaknesses. So I'll go with Florida.
Sorry. Yes, it is tomorrow. Game one. Not tonight.
I figured right off tonight.
So you're picking Florida. Okay. So here's the issue I have, Yorkie. It's the pick with your head or with your heart. So my head would be obvious that you pick with the Florida Panthers, but my heart is with Mika Zibanejad, who
DJ Zbad.
We used to be some pretty good buddies. We would talk every day in the locker room when you used to be able to sit in the locker room and chat. And so he and I had a lot of discussions when he was here, and then he's been on the show. So I'm going to stick, and because it makes for much better banter, I'm going to stick with the New York Rangers.
Yeah,
I don't know that people give them enough credit. They've lost 2 games.
They're great. I talked a lot about Leon Draisaitl at the top of the show. The best player in that series is Barkov.
Did you see him block
his
hand?
He's blocking the shots with his hand.
I thought he broke it.
You know, just won the Selke. This guy, I know he's no longer the most underrated player in the league because everybody talks about him. He's such a difference maker, boy. And man, I love how that guy plays. That to me is your prototypical NHL player. I think he's a guy to me that could be the difference in a very even series, where like the X factor for you.
And so I think Florida is loaded, right? They have all the players.
So is New York. So is New York, though.
New York's a little softer.
Their D are pretty good. Like Jacob Trouba is you talk about, you like your D that make it hard on the other team's forwards. You got Miller back there, who's a big guy.
Yep.
Fox is the best defenseman on both teams. I don't think Florida. Brandon Montour is a nice player, but he's not Fox. So
they just have
Florida's power play don't really have a number one quarterback like most teams do. Montour is a good player, but he's not Fox. So it'll probably be go 7, but it's a pick 'em for me. I got Florida.
Dallas, Edmonton. Let's see if you hate the Canadian teams, or how are you going to pick this one? Oh, you know what? I'll go first if you want, Yorkie. It's Dallas for me, and it's not even a question.
Yeah, I'm going for 2 reasons. I'm going with Edmonton. My heart, the hockey pool I'm in with my boys, my buddies.
Oh yeah, you took all the Oilers.
I am loaded with Oilers. Out of my 10 players, I took 8 Oilers. So financially speaking, I'd like Oilers, the Edmonton Oilers, to win. But I also, this time of year, I think the Oilers guys, their top players like McDavid and Draisaitl, have learned over the years through their losses. I find that was part of the reason they won last night. There wasn't enough battle scars and defeats amongst the Vancouver contingent. Like, you've got guys that haven't gone through it before on that side. Mm-hmm. Edmonton's gone through it, and I'll say the same thing for a lot of key players for Dallas. Wyatt Johnson hasn't gone through this yet. Thomas Harley hasn't gone through this yet. Heiskanen, he's gone through a little bit, but I just think the best players from the Oilers, as long as their goaltending is stable, we're going to pull them through this series.
Just so we're clear, only 6 players on 4 rosters have won the Stanley Cup.
I know.
So
but just look at all.
That's going to matter.
It's not the winning of the cup; it's the steps you have to take, and the Oilers have gone through a lot of adversity and losing, and where a lot of the younger, if you look at key players for Dallas, guys I mentioned, and there's more that haven't gone through that yet.
Okay, but they've got Jamie Benn and Matt Duchene who have gone through battles. I'll put Joe Pavelski without a cup has still gone through battles. But those aren't their best. Like, I'm just saying, like, their best player, their best looks really good right
their
now.
Their best goal scorer is Wyatt Johnson. That's their best goal scorer. He hasn't gone through it yet, and he's a young guy.
We'll see. I'm
just you know what? It's a reason. Yeah. It's a reason I'm looking at. I could, because listen, there's teams before where young guys like that win. Like,
Yorkie, if I was taking Edmonton, I would make the exact same argument you're making, without question.
Yeah. The only thing is I don't trust their goaltending, but I will say Skinner he was pretty good last night and pretty good the game before. So we'll see. For sure, the edge goes to Dallas and goaltending. They've got.
And by the way, they just disposed of the Colorado Avalanche.
Like, the Colorado Avalanche, who basically got their hearts torn out from them when Nichushkin went on the substance abuse. Like, that was devastating. That guy had 10 or 11 goals.
The leading goal scorer, yeah.
Yeah, and McCarr did. Yeah. Anyhow, Colorado could have won that series too. It could have went either way.
Yep. All right. See you on Thursday, 9 a.m. Luke Richardson, former Ottawa Senator. Luke Richardson.
All right. See you, everybody.
See you, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to Coming In Hot. If you enjoyed the show, hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.